in person and see everyone. So we want to get started. We're already late, but we do want to get started now because we have a lot of people waiting online. So this is our attempt at a hybrid event so that everyone can join in from wherever they are. And it's wonderful, really, really exciting to see all of you here in person. I'm really energized. So I think we should get started. Can we do anything about this echo or feedback? Yeah. Super. Maybe it doesn't.
Work for a lot of families that we work with in the past. We work with over 1,000 families. Almost 40% of those families are Indians. So we've got a lot of track record and experience working with families, working with them, planning their education, setting residency. May not be for education, but a lot of them do it for education. So I will, first of all, thank you so much again, Red Pen. They're a fantastic group, and they've got a lot of insight into the entire admissions process. And it's for us, it's a very synergistic partner because essentially we are solving the problems of the same set of people. So for that, thank you again. I would like to present a very, very short presentation. I just want to tell you how is it that we can help you, and then of course it goes back to the Red Pen. Sure. Okay. I'm trying to. Oh, okay. This way? Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm just trying to. Let's start going to presentation. Okay. Stop presenting.
I think when we get the presentation going, how many people have actually heard of programs like the EB5 program or the Portugal Golden Visa program? I think, yeah, a lot of people would have at least heard of it from their friends or their family members, or maybe your seniors have done this for the kids. So definitely something that's not new to the Indian market. People know about this, but we take a very small look at it and how it helps and what are the challenges typically students have when they go to the US and they're not green card holders or citizens of that country. What are the challenges that they typically face, and how can these kind of programs actually address those challenges? Great, thank you so much. So yeah, like I said, we're a US private investment advisory services firm. The way we work is that we've got hubs in every location that we work in. So we don't just work off of the US. The regions that we operate in, like you can see, we've got 7 locations worldwide. In India, we're in Mumbai very much, in BKC. And we actually have local teams in every region that we operate in. So we are very much feet on the ground and we understand the demographics very well. I myself come from a wealth management background. I was at Aventis Wealth Management, where I was taking care of the offshore products. I was heading the offshore products desk. So I understand the global markets. I understand the LRS investments, all of those things. So even if it's not related to this and you want to discuss that offhand with me, I'm available for that. So like I said, we work with over 1,000 clients and around 40% are from India. Across 30 countries we work with, and we've managed around 300 million of assets. This is not counting our latest LCR wealth management platform, which has for more assets that we manage. So let me go down. Yeah. So how do we help our clients? We've got basically 3 business lines. The central one, the focus area for us is the immigrant investor programs, which is the EB5 program or the Portuguese Golden Visa or the Grenadian Citizenship by Investment. These are essentially investment programs where you invest a certain amount, depends on each program, which one. And for a period of typically 5 years, you invest this money, the money comes back at the end of 5 years. And what you actually get in the middle is residency, or rather a level playing field for your children in that place. So they're not going to be treated as international students, so they will have equal access to all kinds of opportunities that any US person or a Portuguese person or a European person have. So that's what it is. So apart from that, we realize that when people migrate to these regions, they also have allied other financial services that they require. By the time you work with us for 5 years, you develop a lot of trust with us. We've seen that, and you like to continue working with us. So there we've got advisory solutions. We've got a mortgage arm where we actually help international clients gain access to US loans, US mortgages. In case you want to buy a house, your kid is migrated to the US and living there, got a job, want to buy an apartment but does not have a US credit history. We can help and bridge that gap in providing loans for you. We do also help with business expansion in the US because our senior management, their pedigree is very strong. We are from like McKinsey and Accenture, Harvard Business School, etc. So the kind of combined experience we have and kind of go-to-market strategies and generally that US connect that we have, that is there. So we help with that. We also have a wealth management arm in the US. We are registered with the SEC, so highly regulated. So we also have access to private equity funds and many other opportunistic deals, which interested families can approach us for. So like I was saying, our team, has a very strong pedigree, and I think some of these names would really resonate with all of you. Some of these are universities that you might be aspiring to go to as well. We've got very good, professional experience also. So naturally, there's a network there, especially in the US, is very strong for us. We're also quite close to even the political machinery sometimes in the US because of the way we, conduct business there. What are the challenges that are faced by international students? And I think that's, this presentation is a very high level presentation. I'm not going to go into details of any investment program that could be boring for people who are interested. But we have a desk there. So at the end of the session, if anybody's interested to know more, please reach out. And I will leave my coordinates here, and you can just reach out, and Navita knows us, so we can just reach out. So what are the typical challenges? I mean, admission rates, as you know, are getting more and more crazy. And I think the statistics of that would be with the red, you understand. Yeah. They would be able to give you statistics on how tough it's going to get your dream college or not. Actually, this is something that could be debatable or you probably cannot prove statistically. But we've seen that if somebody has a green card or has a residency in the US, for example, they're not treated as domestic students. I mean, they're not treated as international students. They're treated as domestic students. So what essentially happens is that you're completely in a different queue, right? I mean, acceptance rates could have an impact on that. For that, of course, you have to plan ahead, right? You have to plan when the children are in school so that by the time they're, applying for admission, you already have a green card, like 2 or 3 years in advance. That's how you should do if you're planning for admissions. But even if you already got the admission or you're almost there, even then there's a lot to gain from this kind of alternative residencies because the kind of professional opportunities otherwise that you will have are very limited because most of the companies that come in, of course, the only usual route that people have, on say at least for the US or any other place, is the H-1B visa, and we all know what joke it has become, and it's quite a lottery system. And the conversion from the H-1B to the green card takes 15 to 20 years. I've got friends who studied with me who still not got it, right? Not to give my age away, but yeah. So the point is that professional opportunities will really open up if you've got a green card, or if you see on the application, I've got a green card, or even if you say that I am applied for the EP5, the kind of things that open up for you are very, very, very different. Tuition rates, in certain cases can really be different if you have a green card, because if you've been staying in a state for a bit and you're applying to a state bank or a government state university, and some of these state universities are quite good, right? They're very nice, good colleges. The tuition rates could be as much as half in some of those cases. So again, that's a cost benefit analysis that you could look at. These are delays in realizing. I'm sure you have people in your network who face this constant frustration, having had to come back, all of those issues, and conversion to even PR, even Europe. To get access to Europe is not that straightforward. You have to actually go and shift there sometimes. In case of Portugal golden visa, you actually do not need to stay in Portugal at all to get that golden visa. You can just be there for 7 days a year, which is completely doable by way of a vacation. And of course, the political environment for immigrants across everywhere, and we've seen a lot of geopolitical tension. It's always good to have the right to actually live and not be dependent on an employment visa. So long term, if you are thinking of your kids to actually go there and settle, it makes a lot of sense to apply for something like this. Yeah. So what are the benefits? I think I already covered it. High acceptance rates, maybe. You can actually get access to a lot of internships and scholarships and all those things, which may be outside the range of an international student because you may not be eligible to apply. Whereas if you have a residency, then you're essentially a domestic student and you get access to all of those things. You can start your own business. A lot of the kids now want to join startups. Unfortunately, startups do not want to sponsor visas. They don't have the resources for it. Sponsors visa for a student. But why should your child not get that opportunity just because they don't have that, right? So this is a very good opportunity, and somebody wants to study there, gets out of Harvard, starts a business, fine. There is absolutely no dependency on any company. If you get into an H-1B, as you know, it's very restrictive. You have to be in a certain kind of a role. Even if you change your role, you need to change the status, the way the visa functions. And here, if you don't like the employer, the way he's treating you, you practically just leave, just like you do in India. So there's no second-class citizen treatment if you have these kind of, that's essentially the benefit. And these are very structured programs. There's a lot of fraud in these industries, and that's why I think it's very crucial to work with somebody like SDR Capital, because we have the credibility, we are regulated, we have got the safest projects that you can find in the industry. So I think working with us would make a lot of difference, and we should probably not hop around and work with agents who don't really understand the entire process. So we actually have skin in the game, we have a fiduciary role in this, so it makes sense to work with somebody who understands. So I think with that, I would leave think we're done with most of it. This is what I just want to leave 2 pages with you. This is the 85 program, and it's the fastest way to get the green card even today. Okay, you may have heard a lot of misrepresentations of like, oh, it's taking too much time, etc. There's a queue for entrance. All of that is not true. Of course, COVID caused a lot of delays for a lot of people, but that's thankfully behind us. The program was a little bit in the lapse for a few months. That's also behind us. Everything is on. The program is back. It's highly regulated now. There's a strong structure. There's also processing times are about to also get better. So I think the investment amount has gone up a little bit. It's an 800,000 investment that you do in the US in a project which creates around 10 jobs, and that creating those jobs is our responsibility. Making sure that that money comes back to you in 5 years is also our responsibility. Your responsibility is just to make sure that this 800,000 is well documented. So with that, you work with an attorney for that. We help you with the entire end-to-end process. We'll also connect you with attorneys. They will file your case and you can invest with us in the project. That is how it works. Your kids need to be under 21 if they to apply as a dependents with you. Otherwise, if they're over 21, they can just apply as the sole applicant. In fact, they can do it to as sole applicant even when they are younger. It's up to you whether you want the full family's green card or you just want the kids' green card. Completely up to you. And I think I'll just spend some time with Portugal Golden Visa. Is the easiest way to get European access, because this is a program which gives you a golden visa in around 10 months time, which lets you live, work and study in Portugal. And after that, and the investment starts as low as 480,000 euros. It's not a big amount. And it gives you instant access to all the Schengen area. And once you've lived through that 5-year period of golden visa, which you don't have to live there, stay in India, visit 7 days. At the end of the 5-year period, you can actually convert it into your Portuguese passport, which then gives you access to the entire European area. You can actually live, study anywhere in Europe. UK is not included because of Brexit. So yeah, so these are the things, and there are lots of nuances around these things, including how do you transfer money from here, how do you manage taxes, all of that. So I think we will provide a very holistic sort of solution for you. And if we don't have something in house, we have partners who help you with it. So that's what I would want to leave you with. And over to you, Kim, again. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Shilpa. I think this is really valuable information to everyone here, because I think the process of studying abroad is not just about studying, it's about a lot of other elements, employment, immigration, just even student visas themselves, and also admissions. So admissions is what we're going to talk about next. And I am going to go through a short presentation to just kind of give you an overview of what we've learned, what's changed in the in the last okay. Did it go on? No. Okay. Yeah. What's changed in the last year? So I'll tell you a little bit about in the last 2 years. Sorry, COVID. I'll tell you a little bit about the Red Pen now. So I think we've been around for about 11 years. We're a pretty large, medium to large size company now, and with about 120 employees all over the world, and we help families and students apply anywhere in the world. So wherever our, the students and families that we work with are, wherever our consultants are, and wherever you want to study, there are no sort of limits or boundaries for the Red Pen. We are based in Mumbai, so that's a benefit to all of you that are here in person, and those of you who are online can always access us virtually. These are just some simple data points about our undergraduate admissions. 90% of the applicants we work with have received offers in their top 3 choices, and I'm going to go through a little bit about how do you kind of define and develop those top 3 choices. So we're going to get there today. Like I said, we work with students who want to apply in multiple different countries, so 15+ countries, lots of scholarships over the past 5 years, and that's for students who have financial need as well as those who don't. So we've counted all of that, and applications to 15 unique majors. And I think, and one of the things that I also want to just remind people, because people, and I'll get some more information in a minute about who's in the audience, but we, I know a lot of you have older children, or you have, nieces, nephews, cousins who want to study at different stages in the education sort of landscape, I guess. So we at the Red Pen, we offer support and services in all these areas. So that includes boarding and day schools is sort of where we begin at the youngest. Then we move on to what we call pre-college advising, also known as early advising or profile development. And that's typically students from about grade 8 to 10. Then we have undergraduate, which is about grade 11 and 12. MBA, postgraduate, and then institutional support, which means that we work in schools and support schools to develop their own counseling infrastructure for their own students. So this is the Red Pen. This is what we do, and like I said, all of this is available to people anywhere in the world who want to go anywhere in the world. So I think it's just really exciting whenever I hear, we have a student from Papua New Guinea who wants to study in the UK, or we have a student in, the Philippines who wants to go to Holland. And I mean, it's just like really exciting to have these unique combinations that I think aren't expected. Everybody's like, okay, US, UK, we're going, and we're from this place only. But we're sort of spreading ourselves out and getting people into places that really are the right places for them. Okay, so that's us. I want to know a little bit about you guys today. Okay, so again, good morning. If you just joined us, thank you for coming. I know it's a Sunday morning, and hopefully this is this is how you prefer to spend it, getting good information about support and services for your children or for yourself. So let me ask, how many of you are here with students or looking at the process from the point of view of, say, grade 8 to 10? Okay, and what about 11 and 12? Okay, great, wow. So depending on where you are in the process, and anybody here for postgrad, MBA, boarding school, okay. We're not going to cover that today, but we always can answer questions. We have our whole team here to answer questions for you. But depending on where you are in the process, this presentation and what we're going to talk about today will kind of apply to you differently. And now my last question is, how many of you are interested in making sure that your child or yourself gets into the best college that you possibly can? There you go. That's what we all have in common. So let's get started. I think I wanted to know, where is everyone in the process? Where do we differ? And where are we all the same? So here we are. Okay. So moving on, what we're going to talk about today is the digital stats is going to come up after I speak. We're going to talk about the admission trends. I think I've gone through all this. And let's go. Okay. Admissions trends. So what I wanted to talk about, and I think everybody is kind of very aware that, people, it's hard to get into college, it's getting more competitive. What do we do? Do we need to do something differently? Should we just do things the same way as we've always been doing? So we want to sort of address that today, and also the basics as well. But this is the increase of international applicants in the past 2 years. So this is what we're seeing across different countries, and it's quite a significant increase in 2 years. Okay, so that does make the whole situation much more competitive. And I think the interesting point about this is applicants, this is not applications. Because what we keep hearing is, oh, well, because the SAT is optional, people are applying to more colleges. That's also true. And that's here, if you can read it. This is, a particular college getting more applications, but that's not an increase in the number of applicants. So no matter how you look at it, I guess my point is there's a lot more students, there's a lot more competition, there's a lot more stress and anxiety in the process and uncertainty because of this increase, right? And colleges are also trying to handle it and manage it in their way, and then applicants are trying to handle it and manage it in their way. But there has been a very significant increase, and therefore more competition. And then just going to go back for a second. What I want to say is the way to address this, the way that we kind of approach it at the Red Pen is we think, of course, your child needs to be happy, they need to find the right fit for themselves, they need to sort of research colleges and target the right places for them to get into colleges. But also there's strategy involved. We don't need to kind of fool ourselves that, oh, this is a fair process, and this is a process that is somehow merit-based, and everybody, if you do a good job, it's gonna work out for you. That's not actually true. And that's because this process is sort of managed, set up, and executed by the colleges themselves, who have their own priorities, right? And they have enrollment management targets, they have They have financial targets. They have all kinds of their own priorities, that are totally out of your control, right? So you need to understand those priorities as well as you can, be strategic in your application, and then execute, and then you will, and then you sort of know what you should expect, right? It's not a guarantee, but at least you're going in aware, okay? So on that note, what we tell students is now, post-COVID, we really see that it's very, very important to understand, to be strategic about where you apply, when you apply, and how many colleges you apply to. Because those are the things that you can control, and that will give you a sort of leg up or benefit and a sort of advantage in the process. Okay, so moving on, along those lines, with those things in mind, those strategic points, want to look at this. So these are some popular universities that lots of our students apply to. So Carnegie Mellon, University of Washington, or UW in Seattle, that's a public university. UC Berkeley, also public. And then Cornell, which is an Ivy League college. So we have the overall admit rate for fall 2022. That's just the admissions results that just came out. And as you can see, it's much, well, you can't see, but it's much lower than past years by a few points at least. But as you can see, for international students, for the numbers we could get at the University of Washington, UC Berkeley, it's much lower. Like look at 17% versus 9.4%. For international students, that's much lower. Even 52 to 44 is much lower. Then when you get into your competitive majors, you get an even lower number. So a major like computer science. So this again, a strategic point you need to understand. And I think, one of the people who had the undergraduate advising team was pointing out to me earlier is that, what we're seeing so much of is that students who are strong in math and physics or other sciences they think, okay, computer science, there's a lot of scope, there's a lot of employment opportunities, so let me just study computer science without thinking, like, is that the right move strategically? But if you look at this number, it's probably not, right? So if you're good in math and science, you really need to kind of and you're interested in computer science, you need to really do your research around what are some other majors or programs in different universities that where I can kind of leverage those skills, have a better chance at admissions, and then maybe figure a few things out once I get on campus. And that's not the same for every university. That's going to be very different. So, we may be talking about a university that has a new program in, say, data analytics. And you could target that program at that university, and then that university may allow you later to transfer to computer science. However, another university, A, may not have data analytics, and B, may not allow you to transfer once you're in. So you really need to do that research on every single university if you're trying to kind of be very strategic about where to apply. Okay. Going ahead. So those are the things I just wanted to talk about a little bit in terms of how things have changed from an admissions point of view with some numbers around it. Also, in terms of strategy, so I've talked about majors, thinking about different majors, thinking about, so I said where you apply, so in which colleges which have which majors, and does it sort of give you a little bit of strategic advantage? When you apply. So when you apply is also a really important point. So I'm not going to get very into the details of what these are, but many colleges have what's called early decision. Some colleges have what's called early action, and some have restrictive early action. So your very top universities like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford have what is called restrictive early action. So what that means is you apply early, you get results early, but you're not obligated to attend. Now, other universities which are also very good, like Cornell, Columbia, Duke, Northwestern, Brown, also have what's called early decision. Now, early decision is you put in an application early, you get results early, but if your result is positive, you have to attend that university. You're done with the application process. You cannot say, oh, I got an ED to Columbia, now I'm going to apply to Stanford. Regular decision. You can't do that. You're done, you're going to Columbia, okay? Which is not a bad outcome. But what I wanted to say is a lot of people are like, oh, we're not comfortable with making that commitment, or we don't know, we don't know now, we'll know later, or we'll wait till regular decision. That's fine, that's your choice completely. But do understand that you are giving up one strategic lever that you have. You don't have many strategic levers in this process. You have your academics, you have your extracurriculars, you have your essays. Every student has that. Some students who make an early decision choice that is strategic will have an advantage, because if they're qualified students, that's a very important point, if they are in the range to be admitted to that college, they might get in early because the admissions rate is higher in early decision. It's lower in regular decision, okay? So that's what I'm saying. This is one strategic lever you have. Choose to use it or not, but if you don't use it, don't be very surprised that you had no strategic advantage. The other strategic lever, and this is not something you can really do anything about, that students have is legacy. And that's just if a parent or a sibling or someone attended the college and the college, it gives an advantage to legacy. And again, that works college by college. Then a student can have an advantage. And again, I see the same thing where students, a legacy at, let's say, Columbia, but says, oh, but I don't know if it's my first choice, so I don't want to apply early decision. Great, that's your choice, but you're giving up your strategic lever because you will have a much bigger advantage as a legacy in early decision. Okay, so those are just some points I wanted to make, because what I really feel after 2 years and having people come to me and say, oh, but no one's getting in, oh, but this student was so good and she didn't get in, and she didn't get in, then nobody can possibly get in, and all these things I hear over and over. And part of me is like, well, you know, that's the way the cookie crumbles, and get over it and move on and be happy where you go. But at the same time, I'm like, you know, you did not sort of make good choices along the way. So if you didn't do that, it's fine. That was your choice at the time. But now you have to kind of live with the outcomes. And I don't think, and I'm not saying that in a way that's harsh, it's fine, we make those kind of decisions all the time, right? You say, I can't decide if I want to go out to dinner on Friday night, so I only called the restaurant to make a reservation on Thursday and they were full. But that's fine, because you didn't want to decide on Monday. It's okay, then you go to a different restaurant, right? Okay, so it's not good or bad, but it is, you have to be strategic, right? Okay, so moving on to talk about the actual process of applying. I think this is stuff that we talk about all the time. I would like to think that the sort of the points on strategy and the changes over the years, stuff that's new today that we're sharing with you. Okay, so just moving on to how you apply to these colleges in different countries. These are the 3 most popular destinations for the students that we work with. They're not obviously the only places in the world. They're actually a very small part of the world, but the US does have the most number of colleges and universities. They have about 4,000 higher education institutions. So there's lots and lots of choice in the US, despite what we might think that everyone goes to the top 50 colleges. There actually are 4,000 to choose from, and they all have something good about them, and they get a lot of students where they need to be. The process for application is very complicated. As I was saying, you know, you need to research different things college by college because it's not uniform. It's different and it's a little unique for every college. So it does take a lot of extra time and a very kind of organized approach, because there are a lot of moving parts. And I'll talk about what those moving parts are in a minute. The UK is much easier. It's a centralized platform. There's one, and all of the universities, almost all the universities are public. They're on this platform. You can apply to all of them with one application. So that's quite straightforward in the UK. Canada is a bit in the middle. So Canada has provincial applications, but they also have some, you know, you can apply independently. Also, the way you apply in Canada can sometimes be by course, but sometimes you can apply in a more sort of, not undecided, but a little more flexible way. So you will, you know, depending on where you apply, this sort of determines how much planning, strategy, and effort you have to put into the process of application. The US is the most. And then these are some other destinations where we do work with students. So Singapore, Europe, Hong Kong, India, Indian liberal arts colleges, that is, and the UAE. So I'm not going to talk a lot about these today, but we're all here to answer your questions. But these are good options. There are good education opportunities in all of these places. This is the general annual cost of attendance in different countries. As you can see, the range here, 25,000 to 45,000, is quite. There's a big gap there. So 25,000 might be maybe a smaller public university versus 45,000 plus 20,000 of getting to 65,000 in the US per year might be sort of a private college in the US somewhere. So versus public, which could get you down to 36,000, but that's quite low. It's very hard to find colleges in that range. Also remember that the US is 4 years, so you're paying that for 4 years. A degree course in the UK is typically 3 years, unless it's an integrated program or something like that. But the cost is much lower in the UK. Canada, again, a very good quality education for a very good price. India, same, very good quality, very good price. And Europe is also quite low. So these are things just to keep in mind, that there are these education opportunities in the less expensive places are very, very high quality. You're not compromising on quality when you look at those. Okay, next I want to talk about the US application. Like I said, it's very complicated. There are a lot of moving parts. So these are the moving parts, okay? So the moving parts tend to be in the voice and talent section. The data section is a little more fixed, and as you can see, it's the largest circle on this diagram, which means it's the most important. So what we mean to say here is that these are the things that a university will look at to see, is this student academically qualified? Will they be able to cope with and manage the academic requirements of our institution? They may be a great person, they may be an excellent singer, whatever, but if they can't sort of cope in the classroom, that's where we really need to scrutinize, their application. So these are the things that are not very, they're not very in your control, in the sense, especially if you're in 11th grade right now. What you did in your grades, the subjects you chose, the grades you achieved, those are kind of all done, right? You can't change them. So that's very important. If you're in a younger grade, it's very important to be strategic about what curriculum you're in, what courses you chose in those curriculum, what you can improve and move forward in a accelerated way with your grades. Standardized test scores, which is SAT, ACT, which I will be talking about after me, is also something that you have a little more control over. You can repeatedly test, you can prepare. If you're, almost, even if you're in 11th grade, you still have time to do that now. And overall grades, that is what you need to understand about the US application process, is that the colleges ask for your transcripts from your school from 9th grade to 12th grade. Okay, and you apply at about the beginning of 12th grade, so they get just the first term of your 12th grade and sometimes even grades in progress. But the point is that they don't just ask you for board exam scores. So a lot of people are like, oh, in 9th grade, I got, 3 C's and a B, but I got 100% in my homeworks, or I got all A stars in boards. They will see those B's and C's in 9th grade. They will see B's and C's in the first term of 10th grade, and they will see straight A's in the board exams. But it doesn't mean that those earlier grades don't count, because the US doesn't look at board exams as sort of the final ruling on a student's academic strength. They try to see, how is the student performed across the board, not on one particular day, but every day. Okay. So that's something to keep in mind, because I think especially younger students need to realize that time is now. They need to, their grades will be seen. And then even 11th grade, I know a lot of, most of our students are in a, 12th grade based board exam system, but even 11th grade grades in each term will be seen by colleges, and that's a very, very important year for US colleges. So that's just something to keep in mind. Moving on to voice. So again, what a big piece of this sort of moving parts, as I said, in the US process was is things like teacher recommendations. You need to get 2 teachers and 1 counselor to write you a recommendation. So that's something to just get organized. Essays, you have to write many, many essays, from a Common App essay that all colleges see, to individual essays about why you want to attend each college, to short takes, which I'm going to talk about this more later. Short takes like, what are your favorite books, or what extracurricular activity have you done the most in, etc. So those are also very important and very time-consuming aspects of this complicated US application process. The application form, the resume, the demonstrated interest, those are all things that you that express who you are. That's what we call a voice. Who are you as a person, right? This is who are you academically. This is who are you as a person. What when you tell me in an essay that when I can see on your transcript that you've taken math, physics, and chemistry, and you tell me in your essay that you're super interested in engineering versus, I don't know, data science, medicine, something else, that you could be using those same subjects, the strength and same subjects. I know who you are as a person. I know what's motivating you, right? So this is a activities, unique talents, leadership, and things that I think a lot of people, when they hear about the US process, they know this is something different. When we think of the UK, or when we think of even India in the traditional university sense, we think of, academic cutoffs. But this is something that's unique that the US application process really looks into and is concerned about, again, because they can see how you fit in on their campus. And it's very important to them. But having said that, it's the smallest circle, okay? Nothing in that circle can really overcome these things. And there are exceptions, of course, for recruited athletes or things like that, but that's a whole other application situation. What I just want to say here is that, we've seen this. We've seen students who, had very strong academics and even wrote very good essays, but they just didn't have anything that really helped them stand out. And standing out is something that students hear a lot, and I think it causes a lot of stress. It's like, how do I stand out? What's my passion? All these things. That doesn't matter. Do whatever you want, whatever you like, whatever you enjoy spending your time on. It's not about making you stand out. It's about building your story. So my story isn't, I shouldn't be worried that I did this thing to stand out. I should be saying, if I do this thing, is it consistent with the story I'm telling university? Because I want to say, yes, I'm interested in, physics, chemistry, and math. I want to study computer science or robotics or whatever. But what's the story of me and robotics? What's the story of me and computer science? How am I different from all the students who have all the same things that I have when I'm being evaluated by an admissions officer? And this is what we know from admissions offices, is they see all this information, right? And they have to then come away from that application and enter a committee room with other admissions officers and explain all of this in one sentence. Okay, here's a student from Mumbai, excelled in the IB curriculum, very strong in the sciences, worked on a robotic, camera, like I don't know, I'm making this up, but a robotic hand or a camera, okay, I'm giving an example, a girl I worked with this year. She had developed a retinal scan to determine whether these girls in rural areas were anemic. Okay, so that's my one sound bite, my one popping out point from all of this. What's the thing that pops up? That's it. That's the thing I'm bringing to the committee and saying, I want to admit this student because of this thing, right? And in her case, maybe it works a lot with rural students in health, right? But it could be anything for anyone, but it has to be that thing that is kind of part of the story, right? And all of the things that she had done kind of built on this. Okay, I think I've spoken a lot about the US. Let me go on to talk about the UK, which is, as we said, easy, very different. And a lot more, if you're more familiar with India, it's a lot more like India, okay? So starting with things like your predicted grades in grade 12, your 10th grade board results is all that they look at. They don't look at your term-wise grade reports and things like that. So they're just looking at your board results and making sure you have the required subject for your course. So if I want to go and study, let's say marine biology at St. Andrews, you have to have taken math or one science at the higher level. And you have to have taken biology and chemistry. So either biology or chemistry has to be at the higher level, and math has to also be at the higher level. Okay, I think this is correct, but I double check it. But I think that's true for St. Andrews for marine biology. Now, if I'm in the 11th grade and I start researching colleges and I see, oh, this is St. Andrews, I love this course, but I never took chemistry, then you can't apply. It's simple, right? You cannot say, oh, I'm gonna try, I'm gonna aspire. Like, you can do that in the US. You may not be successful, but you can do it. And though chemistry is a requirement of marine biology courses in the US, it's not what the admissions office is looking for when they're deciding to admit you, because 80% of students who go to college in the US change their major. You may change it from marine biology to biochemistry, or you may change it from marine biology to art history, or you may change it from pre-medicine to journalism. That all is possible in the US. It is not possible in the UK. So you have to have those courses on your transcript when you apply, okay? And usually you have to have a predicted grade, there's a predicted grade sort of requirements as well. So you have to have, 5 predicted in math and 6 predicted in chemistry or whatever to apply. So this is all very unmovable, not flexible, right? Then you write a personal statement and you may include some of your extracurricular activities in that personal statement, but basically the personal statement is about why do you want to study marine biology? What have you already done about it? What do you know? And sort of what are your goals with regards to it? So it's a very straightforward kind of personal statement with regards to your academic subject choice. There's no sort of like personal story there, which the US essays, if you want to talk about, are much more personal. Okay, so and this personal statement goes to all the 5 colleges you apply to in the UK, and that's it. So you can't apply to like economics in one and marine biology in another and English literature in another college. You have to kind of apply to the same course in all of the 5 colleges you've chosen for the UK. Okay, and there's one counselor recommendation for the UK, and there's an application form, and then they just kind of decide, are you a good fit for the program academically, and also maybe if for Oxbridge, for example, you have to do interviews, so they would decide your fit for their course through the interview. And other colleges have different other ways of assessing that, and that's just, I guess the fit piece is there because it isn't really the case that if you have the predicted grades and you have a personal statement that you're necessarily going to 100% get in. It's very much more transparent than the US process, but it's not 100% transparent. So it can't just come down to things like, and I've seen students who've applied in economics and then been asked, not gotten an offer for economics, but gotten an offer for something that based on the personal statement, the university thinks that student is more suited for. Okay, so that can happen. All right, so that's the UK. India, liberal arts, and I think we have a slide in here because we've just seen a huge growth in this in the past few years. I mean, that's that, and so we wanted to just talk about it because I think it's a great option for a lot of our students. So Indian, and I will be also very honest and transparent that my colleagues on my team, who are all here, are real experts in the Indian liberal arts colleges, much more than me, though I'm going to cover this, but I just want to give them credit for being the experts on that. I mean, we all understand it and we know it, but the nitty-gritties of the application. So the components is much more similar to the US actually. And the components tend to be, the application form where you put your, grades from 10th and 11th, the transcripts, essays, LRs, and ACA. So it's very similar to the US. The difference are these entrance tests, and I think the SAT, SAT, ACT also you can use. You don't have to only take the Ashoka, let's say, for example, the Ashoka entrance test you can take. And interviews. The interviews are very important in this process, and the interviews are selective. I mean, they don't interview everyone. And the popular schools and more seem to be opening every day, but these are the ones that we work with a lot of students for: Ashoka, Kriya, Jindal, Plain, etc. And like I said, it's very similar to the US. I think they're a little bit, they do look very carefully at subject selection. And I mean, all universities do. You have to demonstrate that you're a strong applicant in those, in every core academic field. So there's no concept, whether in the Indian liberal arts or in the US, of, I'm good in sciences, so I only take science. That doesn't work. They want to see that you can also read history. You can understand and analyze English literature. All of those are skills that these kinds of colleges are looking for. So keep that in mind, that limiting your kind of scope too early is not something these colleges love to see. And then traditional India is, as we all know, no, I shouldn't say that, as we might know, professional courses like engineering, law, medicine, architecture, which are very professionally and vocationally oriented. And these are the kind of exams that you need to prepare for. And these exams, to different extents, I would say, enable or limit applications to other countries. So what I mean by that is every year we get many calls from students preparing for JEE, and they say, but I also want to apply to MIT and Stanford because and Caltech, like those are the best technical universities in the US, which is a great ambition, but it's very hard to execute and do well on the JEE and these engineering exams in India, and also do a good job on the US application process, because they're pretty much different, and students have to divide their attention. And as you know, dividing your attention from these competitive exams doesn't work. You will just have your feet in two boats and not really moving ahead, right? So be very aware of that. Things like law, CLAT, I believe at the moment, clashes with the IB exam dates. You can't take that at the same time. So there's a lot of nuances around this. Medicine needs, again, if you're an IB student, 3 sciences is difficult to get, but then you can. But doing, I guess what we typically advise, and this is just in case you're thinking about this option as well, is that students who want to try for these exams, that they should try. If they're unsuccessful, they should take a gap year and apply to the US, because it becomes really hard to manage both. I would also say that if a student is looking at the UK and they're doing these exams, it's a little bit more possible because the application process is more similar to India. I guess that's all I'll say. Now I'm going to talk about essays. How are we on time? Okay, just let me know. I'll just hand over the mic to Avina. Oh, sure. Okay. Okay. All right, application essays, which I alluded to earlier. I'm just going to briefly talk a little bit more about them. I think I said this. There's not much more to say, but what we are, I don't know if you can see that. Anyway. I think I've said most of this, but the thing is just that for the US especially, there's a lot of essays, and that's why we talk about this being a complicated process, time consuming, and also incompatible with competitive exams like JEE or NEET and things like that, because they take a lot of personal reflection and a lot of insights and analysis and time. And so we are working with students on this essay, these essay requirements, and this is just kind of a sample. These essay requirements from the beginning of the year, the beginning of the calendar year in 11th grade. So January of grade 11, we will start working with students, pair them up with a counselor, start brainstorming their essays, and those essays are due essentially 9 months later. 10, 11 months, basically anywhere from 9 months to a year later. So it takes a lot of time and refinement and, to get that personal voice out and to really kind of make these essays, like I said, tell the story well for the student. And, there's a lot riding on it, especially when you have a competitive applicant or a student who's making all the, the data, the academic grades, those things are there. They've done great extracurriculars. The essays need to also, if you kind of fail on the essays, then you just, you've kind of lost that, that opportunity. And I think we saw a student last year who came to us, and he had applied early decision. We see this every year. He'd applied in the early application round to his dream college, and he didn't get in. And that result comes on December 15th, and the rest of the applications, which is usually anywhere from 10 to 12, are typically due around January 1st. So he had 2 weeks to finish all the other applications. So the first thing we did, and he was a competitive applicant, but his essays were a bit dull. And by dull, I don't mean that, he didn't have a trauma story, or he didn't have a, something really dramatic or tragic or exciting that had happened in his life. That's not what I mean by dull. They just didn't really tell me anything about him. It could be that all he wants to tell me is that he's kind. It could be that all he wants to tell me is that, he has, he's an immigrant in a place where, there's no one else like him. That could be the story's simple, but are you telling it well? So anyway, we worked with him in those 2 weeks to really completely change his Common App essay and work very specifically on his why college essays. So why college essays, what we see all the time are students who kind of look at the website and they kind of repeat what the website says about what the college is like. Like, I want to go to this college because this program is really great and I'd like to go there. Well, so would like everyone else who applied. So what you need to say is, I have done 3 things in this area already. I have done 3 things in this area. And for that reason, I want to do the following in the future. Now, your university has a center of excellence for this particular goal of mine. So then I can see what you did, what the college has, how it all comes together. So that was another place where we really kind of helped him elevate his essays, because otherwise they were very generic. There were things that everyone would say. So whenever you're looking at a why college essay, you have to ask, can I say this about any other college, which usually you can? And can I say this about every other applicant? Is this the same reason everyone is applying? So these kinds of things take a lot of time, and they make a big difference, especially when you're talking about a competitive applicant. When it comes to, so I just wanted to also, I think I've covered that, the things like, the short answers, the community essays, what community are you from? I mean, you really, of course you need to tell your story, but you need to, for every single college you're applying to, understand what is that college actually, not what are they looking for, because that could also be generic, right? But what are they saying they offer students? What do they represent? What kind of a learning environment and experience do they think they're offering? And how will I take advantage of that? Because if you just say, I'm looking for this and your college is great, but you've totally missed the point, that's not going to work, right? They're going to kind of say, well, you didn't get it. You're going to miss the point. You don't understand us. So maybe another college is a better fit for you. So this takes a lot of time and a lot of focus. That's what I want to say about essays. Interviews is something that normally we don't cover in this presentation, but I'm glad we're doing it because it's become a bigger and bigger part of what we see students spending time on. So the US, what I want to say, for the most part, this is not 100% true, but it is really almost 100% true, even with the most selective universities. So universities like Stanford, Duke, Columbia, Brown, they will interview as many applicants as they can, and they would like to interview all, right? Their goal is to interview every applicant. So when a student, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be excited, you should be excited when you get an interview call from Stanford, but actually they're interviewing every single applicant. It's part of the application. You need to do the interview, okay? Having said that, the interview is always optional, and I have actually had students get into places like Stanford without an interview, but that's another story. So you need to prepare. You need to take the interview seriously for the US, but it's a very informal process and a very small part of the application, but it is part of the application. So I think so my point is just that the US interview process is in contrast to these others, is mostly what I'm trying to say. So in the UK, the interviews are selective. The students are shortlisted based on the application they submitted, and then they are expected to sit in an interview that is very academic. So if you're applying to Oxford for biochemistry, like some people we know, you will be asked academic questions. You'll be asked to identify a molecule. Nimisa's famous story, she was asked to identify a molecule in her, am I right? In her Oxford interview, and she basically said, we don't memorize molecules, but here's how I would go about the process of deducing what this molecule is, right? So that's what they're looking for. Are you thinking? Are you understanding how to get the answer, even if you don't have the answer? So, I mean, that's a simple, that's an example I've heard many times, so I gave it, but you hear lots of examples of, person applying in zoology and was thrown a bone. So they're academic, or, in physics, math, you're asked to solve problems. In, PPE, you may be asked that philosophy question, anyway, ethics questions and things like that. So they're academic and you're being evaluated academically. So that's very different from the US, where they're like, oh, how do you spend your free time? Tell me what your favorite book is. Those are different. And they're just trying to get to know you in the US. India, again, evaluates it and selective and compulsory. So you have to do the interview. You will be evaluated in the interview, and you are, and only certain applicants are invited. And we spend a lot of time preparing students for these interviews in India. And again, like I said, my colleagues who are here do a lot of that. And preparation for those interviews is pretty critical. Canada doesn't, the interviews are evaluative, but they're mostly video essays, and Canada is sort of known for starting the whole video essay trend, where you, and again, anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what happens is you're given a time, you log in, then you're given a question and you have to answer the question on the spot. You can prepare based on, other students' past interviews, past questions, but you don't know what your question is going to be. And it's usually not extremely hard, but you have to formulate your ideas pretty much immediately. Okay, and that's interviews. Profile building is what I spoke about with the extracurricular and talent piece. I'll quickly go through that. When we talk about profile building, and by the way, our whole early advising, pre-college advising team is here, so they're ready to answer any of your questions. And that's a whole different team of ours at the Red Pen that works with the mostly whole different team than those who work with the college applicants. So a student would be transitioned between the two, which I think is great because you have more mentors. When it comes to how to build your profile, again, subject selection is important. As I said, that data piece is the biggest. It is the piece that matters the most. You need to choose the right subjects for your course. You need to do well in them. And you need to, if you're targeting the most selected universities in the world, you need to choose the most rigorous curriculum available in your school. So that's pretty much the bottom line. Academic enrichment, which means things like, hold on. Yeah, I'll come to academic enrichment and non-academic enrichment. So let me go through these. Subject selection, when we talk about, like I said, you need to choose the most rigorous, but also if there's anything relevant for the major you're trying to target, so management and economics, you need to study math. We always say this, students who want to study at LSE in London, often say, I want to study economics, I'm going to take economics at HL, but I took math at SL. You have to have economics at the highest level they're offered in your school, and if it's the IB HL, and if it's a different curriculum, then you need to take math at a very high level to be considered as eligible to apply to economics at LSE. It's not economics. You can take math at HL and economics at SL, but you don't even have to take economics at all. That's not required. Math is required. Engineering, math and physics, medicine, physics, chemistry, and biology, and math. So these are the kinds of things you need to keep in mind. Now, if a student says, I want to study law, thankfully for law, you can still take all these subjects and then you can apply for law. Law does not have specific course requirements. You don't even have to take, let's say, you don't have to take, say if you're in the IB history, but it might help you write a better personal statement or something else that's related. But let's just say you want to study, environmental law. Maybe you should have taken chemistry and history or something like that as a combination to demonstrate that you understand these subjects well enough to do well in law of that, based on that interest of yours. Okay. When it comes to academic enrichment, this is what we need. So online advanced placement exams. I don't know why it says online. Advanced placement exams, right? They're no longer online, I think. So advanced placement exams, APs, many of you would have heard them. I mean, I might speak a little bit about them later. They're offered once in May. We do not recommend that IB students take AP exams, but other people recommend that. So that's another choice you need to make and consider. Standardized tests, but students who are in, say, CBSE, ISC, HSC, other boards can use the AP exams to elevate their academics. Okay, that's all I'm trying to get at. Standardized testing, when it comes to SAT, ACT, the tests that are required, but also a lot of these other kinds of academic enrichment or elevation programs like competitions, AMC, Olympiad. There are lots of providers of these kinds of what we call academic elevation, whatever it is. There are a lot out there, whether it's a student who takes, a coding boot camp, or, a student who takes a leadership sort of summer program or something like that. There's lots and lots of things to do to elevate your academics. But there's also a lot of things that students do which are non-academic extracurriculars. And it isn't that one is better than the other. It isn't the case that we see, okay, a student who's done really amazing sports, music, performing arts doesn't get in because they didn't win a math Olympiad. It's just a different person. It's a different story to tell, and it needs to be consistent. So these are the kinds of things that students can do to enrich their extracurricular profile in a non-academic area. So, and gosh, I could give you examples of all of these. I think what I want to say, and what I've heard lots of admissions officers say, and what I've heard lots of other counselors say, so I think it's worth repeating, is that none of these are required, not research, not community service. None of these are boxes to tick that you have to do to apply, none of them. So you have to do what you like, what is the best use of your time, what you can fit into your schedule, and do it well and be serious about it. Because if you're trying to kind of, oh, someone told me that I should, do something that you really don't want to do, it's going to be kind of apparent that it's a bit flimsy of an activity, right? The activity is kind of like, well, why did this, I can't understand why this student did that. And maybe even get to the point where the admissions committee is looking at it saying, it seems like the student did this for the application. There's nothing else in their profile that really aligns with this. So you want to be quite careful about choosing things that are consistent. All right, standardized testing, SAT and ACT. We all have lots of questions around this because in the past 2 years, many colleges in the US, and specifically most of the colleges that our students apply for, have become test optional. And that is because testing became difficult to access. In Bombay, I think tests weren't offered in Mumbai for like 15 months, right? So if you had, people were flying to Jaipur and flying to Goa and whatever, and all the colleges were saying, don't do that, don't put yourself at risk, don't do all this, which is correct of them to say, but everybody did it anyway. So, and now testing is available. So the question is, should I test or should I not test, right? So what we see is, okay, MIT, which is, anyway, highly selective, has re-implemented their testing requirement. You have to submit a test score to apply to MIT, and they have lots of reasons around why they did that. Georgia Tech requires it. So these are two really popular choices for strong engineering students, CS and other STEM subjects. So the University of Washington gave this other vague statement, so the point is just that the colleges are going test optional because they feel it is the right thing to do for equity, right, and access, and that, to penalize anyone who can't access a test is wrong of them, and they're right. But the question is, are our competitive applicants submitting this test? They are. As you can see, Emory, Tufts, these are all selective universities. This is percent of admitted students who submitted test scores. That's not, in any case, that's not the minority of students. That's the majority of students who are admitted. So if a student has access to testing and can, and feels like they're prepared to test, they should test and they should submit the scores. The other thing that has happened in the past 2 years, and maybe, you can say more about this, is that because of the test optional policy, students who don't have test scores that are competitive, they don't submit them. So only the high scores are getting submitted. So that is making it look like everyone has high SAT scores and high ACT scores, right? Which they don't, but the people who would have lower scores are just not submitting them. So that makes students feel like, oh my gosh, I have to score really, really high. And that those are the expectations, which they are if you're going to submit. So that changes the landscape quite a lot. So now I'm going to hand it over to our esteemed partner, Abhinav Garg from SAT and Paper. This is your presentation, right? Who's going to talk a lot. This is the SAT has changed in the last. You can talk about that. And so it's changed. It's become digital. It will become digital in the next year. So we want to address a lot of what those changes are and how do you kind of deal with them and prepare for them. So that's what Abhinav is going to speak about.
All right, very good morning, everyone. And thanks for sparing time on this lazy Sunday morning and being here for something meaningful. Given a choice, I would never do that, honestly. So it only shows, the kind of drive that everybody has to figure out some information here. Okay, so I'll talk about quite a few things today. So I'll touch upon the SAT versus ACT. Taking on from where Kim left off, I think this so-called test optionality has created the greatest win-win-win for everyone. So earlier you did not have an option. If you don't have good test scores, there's no way you can apply to good colleges. Nowadays, you try doing a test, and if you get a good score, submit it. Don't get a good score, still there are some options available. It's not like all doors closed for you. So I'll talk about to begin with SAT versus ACT. That's one of the most misunderstood, area. I'll talk about the new digital SAT. Now there's not much to be talked about the new test at this stage. We'll have to wait. And towards the end, I'll talk about the APZ lane. So if you have any questions at the end, we'll be glad to take it up and give. So SAT or ACT, let me start by busting a few myths. And there are a lot of them there in the marketplace. The first myth I've invariably come across is, if you are applying for engineering, you must take the ACT, because the ACT has a science section, and colleges with engineering would give you, yeah, am I audible now? Yeah, okay, so sorry about that. Thanks, Nikhil. Colleges would give you an advantage. They'll give you a preference if you've taken the ACT, because ACT has science. Science relates more closely to engineering. This is complete nonsense. There's no truth in it. The fact is, the two tests are completely equivalent, interchangeable, replaceable. The second fact is, there is no science on the ACT. There's no science. The science section on the ACT is not science, just like the essay on the erstwhile SAT and the ACT is not an essay, it's a commentary, right? So the science section of the ACT should better be called as data comprehension. Just as you've got reading comprehension, that section is data comprehension, which is set in an environment of science. Ideally, I would prefer that you should have studied all three sciences until grade 10. You do not need any sciences from grade 11 or grade 12. You have them or you do not have them, it's okay. You should essentially have studied chemistry and biology in one of the 2 years in grade 9 and grade 10. That's all that you need. So, second myth which I've come across is, certain colleges in the US are going to give a preference to students who've taken their SAT, which is completely untrue again. I haven't seen any college across the globe differentiate between the two tests, right? The scores are interconvertible using a concordance table, which has been jointly published by the SAT and the ACT, which can easily be accessed from the web or from us. So the two scores are completely interchangeable. Now, coming down to what exactly is the difference between the two tests and how does one decide? So I'll not talk about the structural details and how many sections, how many questions. I'll talk about what is the difference between the soul of the two tests. So essentially, the SAT is a test of reasoning and logic. Reasoning and logic, it will give you plenty of time, but it will have complicated questions. The ACT is a test of speed. It's a more sorted test, more direct questions, but there are going to be too many of them. So most students, when they take an ACT diagnostic, they complain that we were pressed for time. And if I had more time, I would do well. But that's a hypothetical statement. That's never going to happen. You'll always have a paucity of time there, right? So kids who are very good with their speed, especially reading speed, ACT would be a better option. The reading section is what I typically use to advise. The reading on the SAT is very hard. It's one of the hardest tests of its kind in the globe today. It's tougher than a GMAT or a GRE, anything. But then it gives you time, and it's a beautiful test. ACT is a very simple test, but you need a lot of speed to get past it. So if you're not voracious readers, you're not speed readers, you'll not have your way around the ACT. This is one major difference. The second difference is the math on the ACT is more critical. So if you have a huge aversion to math, ACT would not be the test. The math on the ACT is closer to what you'll be studying in grade 11 and 12 at school. How do you go about figuring it out? It's very simple. Do not go with hearsay. Do not go with personal preferences. Do not go with what your peers are doing, right? Take a diagnostic test for each of these. Take a full, please do not take a partial diagnostic. So many people administer a partial diagnostic, which is a total test of 2 hours, both sections rolled into one, and they claim that you'll be able to figure it out. That does not expose you to the rigor of the two tests. which is a primary, quality being tested over here. Take a full diagnostic for the SAT, take a full diagnostic for the ACT, and then basis on your performance, your comfort levels, your comparative scores, and your sectional breakup, how does it break up? For example, I tell you, when I advise ACT to someone, I assume that the reading scores will not improve. The ACT reading scores are only a function of your speed. So SAT reading scores will improve, they are tutorable. ACT reading score is only a function of your speed, and assuming that your reading speed is going to improve by 30% over the next 3 months, I think is far-fetched. It's not going to happen, right? So we offer diagnostic tests to every single student who approaches that, which is completely non-obligatory, which is not charged for. So you can always take those 2 diagnostic tests with us, and then based on those diagnostic tests, decide which is the test you should be going for, when should you be taking it, and so on and so forth. So again, this part of the world, I think people have a slight preference, not a slight preference, a huge preference for the SAT over the ACT. The awareness levels about the ACT are low. Also, one major difference is, as of today, the ACT is a digital test, whereas the SAT is a paper-based test until December of 2022. So the last paper-based SAT in India would be conducted in December of 2022. In the US would be conducted in December of 2023. So that's how it takes up. So I think I've spoken about the SAT. ACT, that's the end result is do a diagnostic and figure out. Take both diagnostics. Do not self-administer the tests. I've seen kids, I downloaded one SAT from the web, one ACT from the web, and it went like this. Please will not accept that. We don't believe in that. Do them with people who've been doing it all. All right, let's move on. Oh, that's the buzzword today, the digital SAT. Why has the SAT changed, or why is it changing? Okay, I'll tell you. It's a very interesting question to answer. Why is the SAT changing? So, very, very interesting answer I'm going to come up with. Very, very non-conventional. So, is it changing for the benefit of the students? How many of us agree to that? The SAT is evolving, this is what is claimed, evolving to become a good, better, more student-friendly test. How many of us agree to that? That's not true. They're changing for the sake of themselves. They're changing because they want to stay alive. They're changing because they feel threatened from the current wave of test optionality. So they're making the test probably easier to take. There are multiple reasons, more reasons than that. Usually the SAT changes once every 10 years. Once every 10 years. So if you go back, it changed in 96, it changed in 2006, and in 2016. So technically the next change should come about in 2026. It is changing 3 years upfront in a very, very, kind of a suspicious kind of a fashion. But there are multiple reasons here. The reason which is claimed is that they want to make it more universally available. They want to, come up with the results more quickly, because the ACT today declares results in 3 days. The ACT takes 2 weeks to happen. So let me tell you the real reason why the SAT is changing. One, it's a standardized test. It's a standardized test. And it is not created like my grade 12 CBSE exam is created here, where the CBSE pays some 20,000 rupees to a professor, and he sits down one evening, writes down 20 questions, and a test is made. These tests, after they are made, they have to be standardized. And this process costs the College Board a few $100,000. It's not an easy process, right? It has to be tested live on a couple of thousand students. And so, it's a complicated process. And the College Board has consistently failed to create good new papers in the last 5 years. What happens when they fail to create good new papers? They are forced to recycle old papers, which means a test which was conducted in June of 2020 in the US would be given as an international test in March of 2021. The kids today are very, very quick to figure that out. And they'll put it all across the forums, all across the chat box. And the College Board has come in for a lot of flack for this purpose. The second reason, whether the College Board likes it or not, in the last 3 years, there have been at least 3 instances of test paper leakage. At least 3 instances of test paper leakage, most of them happening from the Middle Eastern countries. At times, the result for one entire country was cancelled. This was Egypt in 2020. The entire country's test results were scraped. They said, we are not going to admit, but that's unfair to the students who were not cheated. Why do I take the test again? So the College Board wants to move beyond that. They want to make it easier to take tests, which requires less of a prep. This is what they claim, although I don't really think that. So it was done in multiple stages. A year ago, the subject tests were scrapped, which one had to take over and above the SAT. The essay section of the SAT was removed. At the same time, they started working on the digital SAT. What these guys also seem to have done is they seem to have studied the ACT's digital transformation very carefully. And they worked on whatever deficiencies were there in the ACT when it went digital. So what advantages does it do for the College Board? It saves them a lot of money to begin. Right? Digital tests are always cheaper to administer. Second, they will not be coming up with new papers every year. They'll operate from a centralized question bank. And once they've created and populated that question bank, they're done for the next 5-6 years. Of course, they'll keep on making small additions. Right? There is no question of test paper leakage because in the new digital SAT, no 2 students will get the same test. No 2 students will get the same test. I'll talk about it. Everybody would get a different test. Now these tests are going to be an equal level of difficulty. Right? And this is doable. This is not rocket science. Forget College Board. In 6 months down the time, Saturn paper will do. Of course, we'll have to change our name because there's not going to be any more paper in SAT. So maybe we'll have to come up with some new name for ourselves. So very quickly, let me address the third point first. What has not changed? What has not changed is still going to be a test scaled on 1600, 400 to 1600. Please understand it's a scale score. This is not a raw score. So if you put a blank sheet, do nothing, you still get a 400 on 1600. That's the saving grace here. Nobody can ever score less than 400 points of the SAT. This is kind of good compensation for everyone. So you'll still be scored on scale of 1600. It will still have 2 sections, 50% math and 50% English. So there's going to be 800 points worth of math there, 800 points worth of English there. So this has not changed. The College Board also claims that the soul of the test has not changed. So the skills that we are testing will remain the same, though certain things will have to change. So this is what stays the same. These scores on the new digital SAT will be comparable to the old SAT. So whether you've taken the old SAT or you've taken the new SAT, when you apply to colleges, the colleges are going to treat the 2 scores at par. Right? Okay, before I move on to what has changed, please do not pay attention to any myths that you hear from the street. A lot of kids coming back and telling me, hey, I'll take the new digital SAT because there's going to be a simpler test. I don't agree. The English is going to become a lot more easy. I don't agree. The second point here is, it is going to be a test. Simple. And for everyone. And on a test like this, you do not aspire for a score. You aspire for a percentile. Right? The SAT scores, if you take a look at them, they are not absolute scores. They are percentiles. For example, I tell you, 1,500 on 1,600 on this test, it corresponds to a 99th percentile. What does that mean? That means 1% of the students who take this test are going to get a score which is 1,500 or higher. Now, whether the test is simple or it is difficult, it does not make any difference. I've been into standardized test prep for almost 26 years now. And I've always maintained that a simple test or a difficult test does not make any difference whatsoever. In fact, a simple test makes it difficult for a sincere, hardworking student. Always. A hardworking student should always pray for a tougher test. All right, coming down now to what has changed. So many things have changed. Let me address them one by one. First, the test is going to be digital. taken off a computer screen, but you cannot take it from home. You have to go to a school, a center, take it from there. The good part is you can take your own laptop or a tablet and take that test from there. Second, the duration of the test has changed. Now, this is going to be a test for 2 hours. That will be 1 hour of English and 1 hour of math, right? Third thing which has changed is that earlier we used to have 2 math sections, one without a calculator, one with a calculator. Now we'll have just 1 math section, and you will be permitted to use a calculator throughout. There will be calculator available on screen that you can use, or you can carry your own calculator. My sincere advice, never use the on-screen calculator because it blocks up the screen. So always carry your own calculator into the test, right? What else? What else is changing? On the English sections, earlier we had 1 reading, 1 writing section separately. My understanding is that differentiation will go away now. Earlier we used to have long passages. Each passage was followed by 10 to 11 questions. In the new SAT, each passage will be followed by just 1 question. Whether that makes life easier for you or tougher for you, there's absolutely no evidence or data available to take a call on that, right? On the math section, you used to have the signature grid in problems, which is a trademark of the SAT. They have been retained. Again, the problem here is the College Board has not released a lot of data, right? So also they're being unfair to all international students with this introduction of the new SAT. I dare say that all of us are being used as guinea pigs, right? Guinea pigs. 2023 March is when the test goes online internationally. The number of international test takers is just about 10% of the total test. 90% of the test takers, they reside in the US. And they want this process to be tried, tested, find out what the problems are, fix them before they launch it in the US in March of 2024. So I can nearly always anticipate that the first 2 or 3 administrations of the new SAT, there's a very high probability, will have glitches either at the software level or at the infrastructure level or at the school level. And we saw very similar glitches, when we went through the transition for the ACT from a paper-based test to a digital test in 2018, right? So one has to keep that into consideration. Now, let me talk about what is the greatest change that the digital SAT is going to effect. So this is going to be an adaptive test, and I'm going to talk about this for some time now. Adaptive tests. What are the adaptive tests available today? The most typical representative adaptive test available today is the GMAT, right? So GMAT is a classic case of a question adaptive test. So for example, you take the math section, you get 1 question, it is mandatory for you to answer that question, right? Now, once you answer that question is evaluated in real time, and the next question that you get, it would be depending upon your response to the first question. If the first question you answered it correctly, the second question would be of a higher level of difficulty and your score would move up. If the first question you answer it incorrectly, the second question is going to be of a lower level of difficulty, but your scores are going to dip. If we take a look at the SAT, it is not going to be question adaptive like the GMAT. It is going to be section adaptive like the GRE. Now, what happens here is we have 1 hour of math. How does it take up? 1 hour of math is going to be subdivided into 2 sections of 30 minutes each or 25. We do not have that information with us as of now. But within the math section, there will be 2 subsections, section 1, section 2. Section 1 would be a test of comparative difficulty level given to all students, right? Once you submit that section 1, that section is going to be evaluated in real time. Within that section 1, you can go back, you can go forth, you can change answers, you can do everything, which you cannot do on the GMAT. On the GMAT, you can't go back to the previous question, right? Out here, once you've taken section 1, that section 1 would be evaluated in real time and results generated internally, not displayed to you. If you have scores above a certain level in this section 1, then the section 2 that you get is going to be of a higher level of difficulty, right? And your scores would move up. A floor would be established. If you do well on the first section, irrespective of how poorly you perform on the second section, your score cannot dip below certain. So we say a floor is established. On the other hand, if you do poorly on the first section, you'll get an easier second section. But in this case, a ceiling is established now. So irrespective of how well you might do on the second section, your score would not be able to move above a certain figure. Right now, it's a matter of statistical research, which of course the Saturn paper is committed to undertake. So irrespective of what they create, it will take us 3 months to decipher and completely, run through that. We started working on the software already. And just like our ACT digital testing platform, it simulates the ACT real time, which suppose even today it's rated as the best platform across Asia. I can promise you within 3 months of more details being made available by the College Board, we'll have a software with us, which will simulate what the actual SAT does in real time without problem. So this is the most major change. The only problem here is that please be prepared. Do not be driven by the fact that this is going to be easier test. We'll crack it with our left hand. No, it doesn't happen like that. The College Board has not released adequate information so far, which is again, I would say, very unethical on their part. Till now, they've always kept a 15-month timeline. So the last time when the test changed, all testing materials, all details were made available 15 months before the test, right? Because that was the time my daughter took the test for the first time. Today, all you have had is a conference from College Board, a press release, a live webinar, which tells us that the first sample questions would be released by late summer. Now, I do not know what late summer, what they mean, but I think it's going to be late July, early August, something like that in the US. And the first of the sample papers would be available late fall. So we're looking at something like end September, early October, maybe middle October, which is insufficient time to be given to test prep people or to be given to students to prepare for the test, for a test which is conducted in March. So let's see, we'll try our best, but again, we'll need some time out here because you also will have to go and decode how the scoring on the new test works, right? It's not going to be as simple as the current test is, which is completely paper-based. So we're going to have more clarity, I think, when we do our first series of presentations by the second week of November, we would have a lot more clarity on how this test is built up. Okay, very quickly, I'll move on. I know running short on time. Specific advice to students. Those who are entering grade 12, they don't have a choice. They'll have to take the SAT. They have to take the old SAT only, so they don't have a choice here. Those who are entering grade 11, these are the ones who are most impacted because they lie on the junction, they lie on the boundary. My advice to all these students is, do not depend on the new digital SAT. Right? Take the SAT this year, take the paper-based one, take the one which has been around for a long time. For the SAT, there are almost 50 authentic test papers available. Once the digital test comes in, there's going to be a huge paucity of good testing resources. People like us also, we won't be able to develop 50 tests overnight. It's a very slow, steady process. So take the SAT this year, maybe work harder on it through the summer and target 2 attempts. There are 3 attempts available this year, one on August 27th, one on October 1st, one on December 4th. Identify your first test date either as August 27th and or October 1st. Give it everything that you have and keep one more in December for reserve. In any case, I've always seen, to my experience, kids always find it difficult to take the SAT or the ACT in the even semester because they've got so much on their plate. I always pity the kids, who take this March or a May kind of an SAT. We have the highest number of test postponements. I'm not going to take it right now. I'll take it later. I'm not able to manage the other things. By that time, they're co-curriculars and this and that, everything goes full book. So if you're in grade 11, try and finish it off this year itself until December. If you cannot do that for some reason, do not take the test in March or May or June next year. Sit down very patiently, work on other things, work on your school grades. Let the first 2 or 3 administrations pass by. And take another attempt for your SAT only in August of next year, not before that, again, capitalizing on the summer. Now, this again might change. My advice to you might change by November once I've taken a look at the new digital SAT, how different it is and how difficult it is to create those papers. So that's about it. Those who are entering grade 10, do nothing. Do nothing. Do nothing towards, I mean, one of the, I'm getting the largest number of calls today from parents whose kids are in grade 10, grade 9. The other day, I had a call from a mom in Bombay. My son is entering year 6. Year 6 is grade 5. He's 10.5 years old. When do you think we are in time or am I late? I said, you're 4 years too late. He should have taken 3 attempts at the SAT already. I mean, I don't know how come people wake up so late. So, so jokes apart, the ideal time to start, is end of grade 10. I would never want students to start before end of grade 10. Exceptional cases, extra bright kids, you may start early grade. Otherwise, please do not start before end of grade 10. So those who are entering grade 10 or those who are younger kids, do nothing towards the SAT prep right now. Read a lot. Reading is something that will always help you a lot. Read as much as you can. Parents approach me, what can we do, up early to ensure that our kids will score well? I tell them, bribe them to read. Bribe them to read, simple. If you can get them to read a lot, everything else can be taken care of later on. But kids with no reading habit and no reading speed, things will look very, very difficult later on. So again, take a diagnostic test just as you're about to finish off your grade 10 and then start prep immediately at the end of your grade 10 and take the test with 4 to 6 months of prep at max. 1 or 2 attempts as you might target. Those who want to start early can do something else. Please do not prep for the PSAT. Right? Those scores are not reported anywhere. You don't have to pay us the money to prepare you for the PSAT. It's a pretty nonsensical thing to me. Doesn't make sense. As a matter of policy, we do not run courses for PSAT. Now, the fact is, it will take me only half an hour to develop the course and will bring in a decent amount of revenue. But I do not think that that is the correct thing to be done. You take that test. It's offered at your school. Never prepare for it. Take it just for experience. And yes, we do offer free of cost diagnostic tests, which are completely non-obligatory. What about Saturn paper? We were established about 6 years ago, courtesy the Red Pen, Kim and Namita, who sweet talked me into tutoring a few kids one-on-one online, and I fell for it, and it changed my life forever. So the last 6 years, we've really come a long way. I could not thank them more as to frankly speaking, acknowledge what we are today. We are one of the leading, not one of the leading, we're the leading online players. We're completely online, completely on Zoom. We do not offer any in-person classes to our students anywhere, and we've never offered. We were like this in 2016 also. So we're not here because of the pandemic. This is a course which is designed to be working like this. It's completely one-on-one, one tutor to one student, some workshops thrown in, highly personalized. We were a 2-people team until 2017 October, which was just me and my better half. So today, less than 5 years later, there are 145 of us, and which are again completely remotely managed, having some fantastic results to ourselves. In 2021, 197 of our students scored a 99th percentile or higher on the SAT or the ACT, which means, which is by a very comfortable margin, 5 times of our nearest competitor anywhere in India. We currently have a footprint spanning 48 countries. That's the number of countries whose students we work with. In India, we work with kids from the leading schools. We are very passionate about our work. So please do approach us whenever you want to do a diagnostic test. You can just go to a website and fill up a very small form. The relevant people will get in touch with you at a pre-appointed time and they'll set up the diagnostics. We have been working on the digital SAT for 15 months now. In fact, let me claim credit for the fact that even when the ACT went digital, we were the pioneers in launching a digital platform which completely simulated the actual ACT. Even today, it qualifies as the best testing platform. On the ACT, in the trailing 18 months, we have had 14 perfect scores, which is once again the highest in India. on the SAT from Mumbai in the last 5 years, there have been only 2 perfect scores, 1600 on 1600. Thankfully, they have both been our students. So one student from Dhirubhai Ambani International in December of 2020, and one student from Hill Spring in August of 2021. Final quick 2 minutes about advanced placements. I'll not take more than, I know my time is up. So APs you can take for multitude of reasons, right? You can start with them very early, but the basic central idea remains academic enrichment, right? Today, I have a large number of kids taking APs in grade 9. So if you want to have an early start and make it count towards your application, do not take the PSAT please seriously. You spend that time doing an AP. There are APs kids can take in grade 9, grade 10, grade 11. A lot of people, I have a disagreement with Kim over there that kids who are doing the IB should not take the APs. I think even they should take the APs, provided that they opt for APs in subjects which they're not studying in school. So they should come up with APs which are in completely different subjects. So which today is equivalent of serving the purpose, maybe better than what the subject SAT is used to serve. You're showing your academic capability in a completely different dimension, which will always add to your application, in my opinion. APs start early always. APs, we offer both one-on-one prep, we offer batches also. So if you want to know more about the APs, get in touch with us somewhere towards the end of July. That's where we do a lot of webinars for the parents and followed by one-on-one meetings. And then we start all these courses in August. I think I've taken a lot of your time. I'll pass it back to him now. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhinav.
So sorry, I missed out something. So I'll be available here for one-on-one meetings between 1:30 and 4:30 p.m. And I'll be very glad to invite all students and parents who are currently in grade 12. If you're younger than that, I would always prefer that you do the diagnostics and then we connect on Zoom, because there'll not be much that we could be able to discuss in a one-on-one meeting. But if you've taken the test early and you want any strategic advice, you've taken the diagnostics already, you want any advice on that. So at the reception, at the registration counter, there's a sheet available where you can register your name. I'll be available from 1:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. in slots of 20 minutes each. All right, thank you.
Well, here we are for Q&A, so that's the right thing to do. Okay, I think Abhinav just mentioned this. Yeah, and we're all here to answer. There's another mic. We're all here, me and Abhinav and our entire resident team is here to answer your questions. So let me take some questions from me. Shivani. An AP program?
No.
Like, is it, there's no bottom eight, lowest?
Talking to a parent from the US yesterday, kid is in grade 7, did 3 APs last year. 2 tests of 3 hours each to be taken on 2 different. So 3 hours for SAT diagnostic, 3 hours for ACT diagnostic. They'll both be done in our supervision and they must be done 2 different days, never the same. So the question was, how long would the diagnostic test for the SAT and the ACT take? So 2 tests of 3 hours each to be taken. The only case in which we will not take the ACT diagnostic if you have got missing sciences, as in missing chemistry or missing biology in grade 9 and 10, or if you are not planning to study math in grade 11, just forget the ACT, just do 1 test of 3 hours.
Yeah, so one more question, when you have 10 to the SAT, do we submit both the 2 scores, only one is the best one?
No, we prepare only for one. The diagnostics are internal tests. We figure them out.
I'm talking when we appear for the SAT exam.
Yeah.
You said make 1 attempt from this month, second keep it for the next month. So when we submit to the university, both the marks have to be submitted, only one which you have considered.
Both the scores will be forwarded to the university, but the university would look at it as per its own policy. No university would ever calculate average. The largest numbers would accept what we call as a super score. A super score is you take the individual section-wise highest, math and English, and you add them up. There's some universities that will not accept the super score, but will take the highest score. This is a very small number comparatively. Am I right on that, Kim?
It's a small number, it's, but sometimes very popular and selected universities like UC Berkeley do not accept super score. And you can suppress a score. There's nothing, most colleges do not accept what's called score choice, where you send only your highest score. The colleges almost always see all the scores.
And one more question regarding this, that when we are appearing for these two papers, the Saturn, what is the best score which is usually at a good university? Like there are a lot of controversial questions about it. If you have to score above 1550 or 1540, below that there's nothing available basically. Can you clear that concern?
I'll ask him to answer.
So I think, we do see, I have two things to say about this. First, I'll say what is, the right thing or the nicer thing, which is all admissions officers tell us, and I believe them, that they do not spend any time on looking at the SAT score. They look at the score, they say, this is the score, and they move on to the essays and the rest of the application. If the score isn't in their range, they note it. If the score's in their range, there's no other discussion. There's no like, oh, but they took it 3 times, oh, but this is on that day, and it was a 710 instead of 720, and that student got a 720. Doesn't matter. There's almost no incremental value, let's say, from getting, say, 1530 to a 1570. I would say there's none. And if a student has an option to spend more time to get that 1570, I would say spend that time on something else. That's what I would say. And I honestly believe, I think there's a lot of things admissions officers say that I don't believe. I actually believe they don't, why are we spending time on test score? Right? It's either there or it's not there. There's nothing to discuss. And so I think a lot of people that range, they look at you as a serious candidate for admission. If you're not, they won't. They're not going to say, they're not going to just kind of debate it to a committee. That's one thing. And but to answer your question more kind of directly, I think if a student is targeting, Ivy plus, even top 20 universities in the US, I would say that a score above 1500 is competitive and the higher the better.
Yeah. And I also want to say that I think, there can be like a huge diversity between like I have 800 in math and then a 600 in English. The rule of thumb would be about 700 in both sections. About 750, sorry, about 750, about 750 in both sections. So yeah, if you have like a 710 and then a 780, that's fine, but like a 600 and an 800 probably won't kind of go down because they will evaluate both sections. They will look at the section score. Okay, hope that answers your question. But again, don't don't just your university choices. If you have that score, then you're going to be a competitive applicant, to those particular range of colleges. You don't have to go down to the nitty-gritty that, okay, a friend of mine from my school has a 10, 20 points higher in math and I have less, so don't do that.
Okay, there's a question.
Okay, go ahead and then.
So you just said that some colleges need to investigate, what subject choices, what they need HL, SL, or they think like you just mentioned for London, like we need math HL and eco HL for if you take London House School.
No, I can answer that. So what Kim was referring to is that universities in the UK, they have something called minimum entry requirements, where they tell you upfront what subjects they expect you to have in 11th and 12th grade, and what they give you a conditional offer if you're applying to UK universities. So they'll say, okay, if you want to come to say MSc to study economics, we require you to have say 42 points in the IB with 776 at high level. All of that information is available on their website. Okay, and obviously it's different for the different courses and the majors that you apply for. So one example we like to bring up is economics at LSE because they care more about the math, and you should be having the highest level math program in your curriculum rather than economics, even if you want to study economics. And the rule of thumb, I think even in US universities, if you're looking at applying to business programs or management programs, or even economics, they're going to evaluate your ability, your quantitative ability in mathematics. Because essentially, economics at university is applied math. Does that make sense? That's what it is. Okay, so they want to make sure that you're going to be able to fare with that kind of, quantitative, those quantitative courses. So it doesn't mean that, just because I don't have like higher level math, I can't apply to Wharton. But if you are looking at a Wharton and you come to us early enough, we would recommend that you take the HL math. Whereas in the UK, for example, you will not even be eligible to apply. Whatever's written on their website is kind of gospel. It is the minimum entry requirement. So even if you have a 45 predicted, but you have an SL in mathematics, you're not eligible for MSc if you want to study economics.
Just a follow-up question, how many attempts are you allowed in SAT and ACT? And Kim, one of the things you mentioned, do colleges write that range that you're talking about in SAT, or is that an information that we are privy to beforehand?
So you can take as many attempts as you want, but beyond a certain time, your scores won't improve. So what we say is take 2 fully prepared attempts, take large number of mock papers. So to me, I mean, I'm always a great fan of single attempt. A second attempt is only a backup which covers a test day fiasco. If you're not prepared, don't take the test.
And yes, all universities publish the score range. They usually publish what's called 25 to 75% range, mid-range. And so what that means is that they'll say, you know, in the math section in the SAT, our mid-range is, you know, 1430 to 1570. So that means that 25% of people who were admitted got below 1430 and 25% got above 1570 or something like that. And those numbers are made up, but they give you this range. If you're in that range, then you can apply with your score. And you know, even Harvard, I mean, it's not like that range is, you know, 1550 to 1600. It's not. So it takes sort of everyone into account. All right, a question. Does that answer your question? In the back?
Yeah, okay. I have a question about the SAT exam paper, SAT exam for this year. Okay, so my son will be entering 11th grade this year from the fall of this year. Okay, now, is the time sufficient to prepare for the SAT this year, or should I postpone it?
It's sufficient. 4 months is good now.
Or is it? Okay. Okay.
4 months is good. Now start just as the main exams get over, plan for the decisions.
Right. Okay, right. And how long is this book valid? I mean, because
5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Scores are valid for 5 years.
Okay.
I think, you know, just to follow up on that, I think a lot of people hear that and they think, well, that's so early. But actually, if he starts preparing now, let's say he takes a first attempt in the beginning of 11th grade, then 11th grade gets full on and starts and he wants to take another attempt, he really only has like, I think there was just an attempt in May, but kids are like busy with school and I mean, it becomes really crunch time for these kids to keep retaking the test. It's difficult.
But now what happens is when you give 2 tests, they have the super slow calculation, right? But that will not happen when the digital comes because either it's complete digital or it's complete paper. I mean,
There's no clarity on that. There's no clarity.
Yeah, so I mean, I just want to, when you're asking about when to prepare as well, you know, I think after grade 10, there's a good chunk of time when you can actually sit down and do the proper preparation, you know, go through a course or whatever other online program you want to go through. Because the minute you hit 11th grade, everything hits you, no matter what curriculum you do, whether it's the CBSE, the IB, or the A levels, or even the ISC, the amount of work that you have between, you know, from 10th to 11th grade is tremendous. And you suddenly get sucked into that. And then to prioritize your SAT is going to be a challenge.
so, but this year what is happening is all the ICs, CBSEs are happening right now. Right?
Yeah.
So we don't have that big chunk of vacation
Yeah.
to prepare for the SAT because schools will be immediately starting in July probably. So
Yeah, but
that's the whole problem here.
yeah, no, I understand, but I feel like even if you can start a little bit in June, it'll help.
It should be okay.
It'll help, exactly. I mean, you can continue to, you know, plan out your schedule and your time when you hit 11th grade, but it's only going to be more overwhelming as you progress through high school. Like 11th and 12th grade is hard. They're going to have their own internal projects and a lot of other stuff happening.
Hi there. How many AP exams do you think a good student should take?
It's a very difficult to answer question. The number would be anywhere from 2 to 50. Depends upon what your specific needs are. Again, I told you, APs are, I think, they are the most complicated tests in terms of why you should be taking them, how many you should be taking them. There cannot be a general answer. Into use part, all I can say is, in a given year, irrespective of what you've been advised, you should never target more than 3 years. And that also is something you should take when you started very early. So each year I get those numerous requests, in Delhi especially, which is CPSC, ICSE city and like Mumbai, when they come to you in March, I want to prepare for 5 weeks. Can you please help me? And I have a very clear single syllable answer which says, no. Do not pick it up. It's not doable. You have to be very realistic about what can be done. So start at least spread them across. If you're starting in bank, build up 8 APs over a 4-year period. That will make a lot.
I have a couple of questions, both of them. As AP was the discussion. For an IB student who is transiting from an ICSE curriculum in 10th grade and going to an IB, there's a thing, the need of an AP, especially when you're doing a finance or a fintech kind of a situation. And he has taken a proper HLs and the proper math and science combination. Is it must to do AP? Because IB would be a rigorous course. I'm talking about student who's like good in his accounts, number one. Number two, you mentioned about selection of AP, SAT to ACT. It doesn't make a difference in terms of it's absolutely fine. Kim, one question for you. You mentioned about legacy advantage or a thing. If a parent has Columbia or a UPenn or something like, does that really help them, the children? Can you just throw some light?
So I'll just, I wanted to just say one thing about the APs, and I don't know when the student was transitioning, but because the APs are in May, and I mean, I can correct me if I'm wrong, and if you're a student that's like right now is in 9 and you have a year to plan, the May is a little bit open for a student transitioning from ICSE to IB, right? So you can think of an AP then, but you have to go strategic about.
You can't make an AP now this year.
So
This is gone because I'm talking 10th gone.
Oh, 10 is gone. Okay, then never mind. But Bernie, you are done.
Only 11.
The primary purpose in taking the AP is to prove their academic performance. Now, it shows them that I can pass my side of the field, I can pass my side of the field. So I would not have that kind of a problem coming there and studying your way. I can show that right now. For an IB student, that is not required. Your curriculum is already globally recognized. Nobody is going to question that at any point in time. So if you're doing an IB and you still want to do an AP, that AP would be done with a view to augment your academic profile, add diversity to it. Which is like saying, some people might do a math Olympiad. I might say, okay, I'll do a calculus AP, or I'll do a geography AP, or I'll do a history AP, because my current scheme of things at school does not allow me to study this particular subject, but I'm passionate about it.
I just want to add to that, if you are in an Indian curriculum and you're taking these APs, you cannot substitute your APs for school. So it's not like, it's okay if I get like 60% in my ISC, or I'm not so happy, like HSC, I'm not happy with it's okay if I don't do well, I'll just do 8 APs and get 5. It's not a substitute. They still want to evaluate the curriculum that you're studying in high school. Now, in certain schools, like in America, there is an AP curriculum, but if you're in a school in India, they're going to still evaluate whatever curriculum you're doing in high school. So it's not a substitute. Just remember that. Like how Abhinav said, you can add, one subject, like one typical situation that we see where students take an AP is say somebody wants to end up studying, say, psychology in Canada, biology is a requirement, and you might not have taken the science stream in the Indian curriculum. So then they end up taking an AP in bio to supplement their high school curriculum, and that's fine. But you can't just ignore your high school curriculum because that's what they're going to evaluate first. That data bubble that Kim showed, that's what they really care about how you're faring in school and what you're doing.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, we just checked and she gave the example of Canada, so I want to just clarify that Canada is pretty particular about your APs having to be on our high school track. So just keep that in mind. Okay, going on to your question about legacy. Legacy admissions is definitely an advantage and a thing in the US. Now, different colleges handle it differently. For example, UPenn, which you mentioned, is pretty clear that if you studied in any of their schools or colleges at any level, at, MBA at Wharton, or, a master's in education, or you did an undergrad or whatever, your child has a legacy status. So they're very clear. Now, other colleges, like in particular Columbia, on their website, I think they say, you have to be, you have to have gone to the college, and then your child has an advantage in the college. But we've also seen that's maybe not 100% true, but they do ask you, what on the application, a lot of universities will ask you, do you have a parent, sibling, anyone who's attended the university? And they take that into account. Now, one of the things that's very important about this, and I kind of have to counsel people about this a little late most of the time, is that to get that advantage, whether it's explicit or implicit, or you're just trying for it or whatever, you need to apply early. There is almost no advantage when you apply in the regular decision pool, because they're looking at you saying, well, you're a legacy. You didn't really bother to kind of love us as much as people who applied early, right? So then, how do we really take you seriously? So it's really important to apply early. And that's actually, my co-founder, Kavita Mehta, who's doing something else now. She is a Wharton alum, and she has attended Wharton alumni sessions, like at reunions and things, where they talk about this. How do we evaluate all of your kids when the applications come to us? And they were very clear about that. There were a lot of things that they said, but one of them was just this early decision thing. You have to commit to 10 before we will evaluate you and give you that legacy advantage. Now, having said that, a college like Stanford also published some statistics, and I think it was something like, I think this number is wrong, but something like, the admit rate at Stanford is, let's say, 4%, 5%. For legacy, it's 30%. So it's quite a big advantage, but it's not 100%, right? And the other thing that all of them say is that legacy can strategically work in your advantage if you are a competitive applicant. You cannot come in with a B average, having done nothing, and just think you're getting into Penn because your dad was there. That's not happening. And we see that all the time, right? So that doesn't work. And I would not recommend a student waste their early decision sort of chip on that hope if they're not academically qualified. I would advise them to really think of an early decision choice that is more aligned with their academic sort of background.
Yeah, hi. If one student is from IB and one is from A-level, so during admission process, is there any advantage that IB student is going to get over A-levels, or
No, it's not. What they do look for is the subjects that you're taking. Okay, so no curriculum is better than another. In fact, a lot of the students that we work with in the Red Pen are CBSE students, ISC students, HSC students, and they've been admitted to top Ivy League schools. They care about what subjects you're taking. So that's a lot more important.
So getting any credits while doing your course, is that IB is going to get any extra credits for doing particular?
No, so that's university dependent. That's a good question. So
University credit or
university,
yeah.
So university credit. So what ends up happening is that universities will explicitly say that if you have a 6 or 7 in your high level, you can get these many credits, and there's usually an upper limit to that. And each university has their own policy on giving credits. So yeah, you can pick that up.
Some universities do not. Some universities, for whatever reason, don't give A-level credits, but they give IB and AP credits. So, and I think there are some universities that don't give any credits. So, you need to look into that on a case-by-case basis. One thing I just want to go back to this legacy point for a minute is that there are a lot of colleges, particularly public universities like UC Berkeley, UCLA, that don't care about legacy. They don't care who you're related to and who went to your college. So just look into that if that's your situation.
One more thing on legacy is that a lot of talk about legacy in the US as well, and universities have this unfair advantage. They kind of announced that they're dropping their legacy policies. I think CMU did that, right, recently, and Johns Hopkins did that. So just have a look, and you do need to know what policy that particular college has. So. Yeah.
Subjects they require for that? In the US.
Okay, so typically if you want to study computer science, you should have math, physics, and chemistry.
HLS.
It doesn't matter. Okay, like, I mean, obviously math should be HL, but look, the US doesn't have those very specific requirements. It's like, it's not like you will not be allowed to apply if you have physics, chemistry, math, and SL. They're just going to wonder why you didn't do the HL, because, you know, they're not going to wonder why you didn't do English HL if you want to apply for computer science, but they're going to wonder why you didn't do math, physics, and chemistry HL if you want to study CS.
Okay.
Okay, and it's okay if you take like maybe physics and math and HL and then chemistry and SL, that's fine.
Where do you get to know these subjects? Like, suppose if my son wants to drop out chemistry and he just wants to math and physics, would that university permit that or not?
Yes, I mean, it's like I said, it's for US universities, it's not like these are restrictions. For UK, they might be, but again, why would he want, like, I mean, I can talk to you about this maybe after, but you know, like the students that are also applying to CS and like we showed that the percentages of admission to CS programs are so low, why would he not want to do chemistry? I can talk to you about that later.
I just wanted to add that the US universities, all of them also do their admissions differently in the sense that, like, you apply to Stanford, you are applying to Stanford to the university. You're not applying to computer science. They will ask you what's your interest, and you can indicate, and you have to indicate an interest. You can also indicate undecided. It's fine, but you are not. They aren't admitting you into the major. So that's one thing. And like I said, it's because they know you're going to probably change your mind. So they're not admitting you to the major, and that, but yet a college like USC, you have to apply for a major, and you're not allowed to apply undecided. You can change your major once you do that. So this is all variable, right? And the other thing is that the US, unlike the UK, they do not publish what we call entry requirements. Now, but what I always direct people to, because they always ask me, can my kid drop this or that or whatever, is you can go to, and my favorite one to forward is Stanford, but you can even, it's there on a pen, it's there everywhere, is they have a part of their website, their admissions website, that says something like, you know, what do our successful applicants do, right? And they will, and that, the curriculum that they outline there is a very US-centric curriculum, which is very different from the way we do things. But what's there is 4 years of science, 4 years of lab science, 4 years of English, 4 years of math, and I think 4 years of 2 years of social science and foreign language. So there's things on there that can give you an indication. And so when I hear people say, oh, you know, my kid did 2 sciences in IGCSE and now they're going to do 1 science in the IB, to me, when I look at a website of a selected university that says you need to have all 3 sciences, and not all 3 sciences for 4 years, but you have to study all 3 sciences in high school. You haven't. In that case, you haven't done that, right? You dropped something, which is fine. And this gets into a lot of nitty gritty. And it's not the case that you're like, oh, that student who took all 3 sciences in IGCSE, but then chose computer science in IB is a complete failure. That student might have also gotten in somewhere great. There's so many sort of permutations and combinations that you can do that the US accepts, but you just need to be aware, especially if you're thinking about dropping.
Yeah, just one more point is that you know, they specify on their website lab sciences. So lab sciences is biology, chemistry, and physics. Computer science is not a lab science, and sports science and environmental societies and systems is not a lab science. Lab science is only physics, chemistry, and bio. And I'm happy to speak to you about this a little later. We can take one more question. I think people are getting a bit restless, and you know, the Red Pen team, Abhinav, Shilpa, we're all here if you have any questions about anything we've spoken about. So let's do one question and then we can come in the other.
Yeah,
Okay, so I just entered my 10th grade. So how do you advise me on planning? Like, when do I take the APs? Like, how do I go about it? Because there's a lot more that happens. Like, I have to apply for the schools for IB, levels, ISP, stuff like that. So what do you like advise on that?
Yeah. Nanika, we have our head of our early advising team, and she can give you very specific advice. Do you want to answer the question live? Yeah, why don't you go and just speak directly with Nanika?
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you.